the trail, and lessons are still emerging. So I'm going to share some of these lessons because of the limits of this format using this webinar. I won't be able to get through the whole presentation, but I'll give you enough to get a good taste. And I'm always excited to tell this story. So you guys ready? You won't be able to see me, which is a good thing because you'll be able to see a lot of these pictures and slides. So let's go. October 18th, 1987 was the birth of my first daughter. I have five children. And during that time, while in the emergency room, I was held her for the first time and just was mesmerized by the in and out motion of her tiny tongue. And that was that look in her eyes just penetrated my heart. And I realized that I wasn't alone because you see, I was wildly strung out on cocaine at the time. And I'm not proud of that fact. I'll never be proud of that. But I can tell you that after more than 28 years of recovery, I'm no longer ashamed. And shortly thereafter, on December 28th, 1987, is when my journey of recovery began. And I haven't had to use or drink or a drug since. On March 19th, 2010, fast forwarding a little bit, like a couple decades, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer of the tongue. And if you look at this picture, you can see that lump in my neck. I'm holding my daughter, Mary. And that I was diagnosed that day, and I knew that I had life would continue. And so we had a daddy daughter dance, and I took her to the dance, and treatment would begin shortly thereafter. During treatment, I had two inpatient chemo stays, 39 radiation treatments, withered away to almost nothing, had a feeding tube. And this is a picture of my family. And Sandy had started Valentine's Battalion, where I had people literally all over the world praying for me. And I believe that's one of the reasons I'm still here today. I noticed that as I went through the treatment, it was a curious combination of support, like through Valentine's Battalion, and solitude. And I found myself alone, really in pain from the throat and the mouth and all the treatment, and just weak and emaciated. And that I had to draw the line too and figure out what the difference was between solitude and isolation. Because those of us in recovery and that understand addiction also know that it's a disease of isolation. And as I got better and healed, I was able to speak at recovery walks. And finally, as I healed, I was able to play golf in my favorite golf pants. I love those pants. Don't laugh. I can hear you laughing. Cut it out. But anyway, what did I learn from that episode in my life? That each day is a gift, and we know that as people in recovery. We also know that we are always told to ask for help and might not always be the easiest thing to do because I like to be independent. I didn't like people working on my yard. But a guy from my church came to me and said, Phil, you have been a blessing to others. Don't deprive us of the opportunity to be a blessing to you. And that really rang true for me. And he came over with a crew of guys and they really helped out with my yard. And finally, the last one is to let love in. Um, I'm pretty good. Most of us as helpers, we're good at helping others, or serving others, but we're not so good at letting people love us. Now, my reaction is a lot like my 2-year-old son Matthew's when he wanted to receive a little love from his big sister Sam. The apple does not fall far from the tree. And so here we go. The reason I tell you about the cancer episode is that as I was detoxing from all the medication, narcotic medication, the body was recovering from the radiation and the chemo. I was filled with anxiety. I was filled with just not uncertainty. And then I heard a whisper, which I believe was a call to walk the AT. And my first response was the whole thing. And the whisper said, yes, the whole thing. And I told Sandy, and she had her typical response, which was, "That's so sweet." And you know what "that's so sweet" means, like, okay, really, this too shall pass. But a lot of things unfolded where it all became apparent that I was going to do this. So what was I being called to do? Let's look at the AT, the Appalachian Trail, a little bit. It's 2,189.2 miles. It goes from Georgia to Maine. The elevation change is like climbing Mount Everest 16 times. It covers 14 states. It took me 189 days to complete it. That's kind of average, maybe a little longer than average because, I was 55 when I did it. I started on March 19th and I finished on a crystal clear blue sky day on September 23rd. I averaged about 11.6 miles a day. Over the course of this trip, I took 12 zeros, and zeros are the um, equivalent of not walking. So that's called a 0 mile day, where you just take a day of rest. In the last 58 days on the trail, I only took 1 zero, so I kind of got in better shape and learned how to manage my time up better. Uh, they estimate that it takes about 5 million steps or so. Um, that's about 2,000. It's about 2,000 miles, 2,000 steps per mile. I dropped 56 pounds. I went through 6 pairs of boots, and one of the things that I found that was really unusual is that over the life of the Appalachian Trail, it's been around, I think, 70, 80 years, that less than 15,000 people have ever completed a through hike. I was like, wow. So where do we begin? The first thing I did is remember March 19th, 2010 was the day I got diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. So I honored the call that I had by setting a date to start, March 19th, 2015. I did that right away. And on that day, my friend Neil Campbell from the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse picked me up and took me to Springer Mountain, Georgia. You know, this point is the actual plaque, and Neil took this picture on Springer Mountain, Georgia. And this was one of the most emotional moments on the trail for me because my goal was never to finish the Appalachian Trail. Let me say that again. My goal was never to finish the Appalachian Trail. My goal was to start. And I think that's where so many people fail, is we riddle ourselves with doubt and we don't start the things on our bucket list. Remember that bucket list movie? The whole idea of a bucket list is to take each item and start them. Um, I think you have to start something because there. I'm a little off because I'm thinking about this movie, Night and Day. You remember that's with Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz, and Tom Cruise is Roy Miller, and he says, "Someday, that's a dangerous word. It's really a code word for never." So that's why it was so important for me to set a date and to begin. So the first theme that I learned about, or really came true for me or resonated with me, is this idea of beginning. In order to start something or accomplish something, begin. And didn't wasn't that true for me in recovery? Because I never would have got 28 years of recovery without beginning. And so those early in recovery, take the first step, begin. I was 4 days into this trip and it was difficult. My pack was 39 pounds. It had all this gear in it. Um, 39 pounds might not sound like a lot, but it is a lot when you're going to walk 2,189 miles. Um, the first day was in the pouring rain. It was windy. It was cold, but the weather got better. So I went to see this guy Pretzel at Neal's Gap in Georgia at Mountain Crossings, and we trimmed 13 pounds. That's what's written on the box there. I got a new pack. I sent a lot of gear home, and I was ecstatic because I knew that with the lighter load, I actually had a shot at finishing the trip. And I learned that the lighter the load, the farther you travel and the more enjoyable the journey. The lighter the load, the farther you travel, the more enjoyable the journey. And this is me feeling lighter and getting ready to go. And so the theme is obviously lighten your load. And there's many metaphors for that, whether it's has to do with emotionally, mentally, the emotion and the mental kind of worrying of your mind is what, for me, causes stress. And I have to let that go. And then there's the physical load, whether it's weight you're carrying on your back or your body. How do we lighten our loads to get that to feel lighter so we can travel far further and enjoy the journey more? Let me show you a few pictures about the trail. And I like to say on a lot of my Instagram posts, as many of you probably followed, I like to say sometimes the trail is, and sometimes the trail is a little rocky. Sometimes the trail is well defined for a little while. Sometimes the trail is picturesque. Sometimes the trail is really rocky. Sometimes the trail is flower lined, and sometimes the trail is steep. And sometimes the trail is soft and inviting, and sometimes the trail is a bridge between two states. And sometimes the trail leads to a better view, and sometimes the trail can be downright abrasive. Sometimes the trail is over a gorge, and sometimes the trail is really, really rocky and steep. And sometimes the trail is so steep, you need a ladder with 12 steps in it just to get to the top. And sometimes the trail is green and lush. And sometimes the trail is chock full of slippery roots and snares. Sometimes the trail is a puddle. Sometimes the trail skirts the steep, rocky areas. And sometimes the trail is a way out that others have built. And sometimes the trail is long, hard descents. And sometimes the trail is muddy and you can get bogged down. And sometimes the trail is down a cave where the going gets dark. Bear with us as we work with the technology, and sometimes the trail is a way up to the light. And finally, sometimes the trail is smooth, real smooth. The theme for me when you encounter all these trails and these variety of trails is that we have to accept it. It's acceptance. And those of us in recovery understand what acceptance is all about. The trail is what it is. I could not change it, and just like life, I had to accept it. And my attitude always improved when I accepted it. Another part of this is when Tough Love joined me. Now, Tough Love is my daughter, Samantha, and she got her trail name. Everybody gets a trail name. As you may or may not know, my trail name was Right Click because my right knee clicked going uphill. Samantha got her name by one day we were traveling. It was a hot day, and we stopped to rest, and I was out of water, and I said, Sam, can I have some of your water? And she goes, Dad, we went by 5 places where we could have stopped to get water. No, you can't have any of my water. And so Rocksteady, who was hiking with us at the time, she says, Dang, that's some tough love. And that's how she got her name, Tough Love, and she still goes by it. She hiked uh, 280 miles with me, never having hiked before, over 23 days. That was in May of last year. We saw amazing views of Virginia. This is our tent in the Grayson Highlands, and this is Rock Steady. I mean, Tough Love with Charlize Theron. Did I get your attention in case you're not watching? Yes, that's the pony. We named her the pony because of her beautiful blonde hair. But up in the Grayson Highlands, wild ponies run. She also had the ability to test herself through a lot of tough terrain, including this picture in a rock formation called the Lemon Squeezer. And then she also got to be on top of the world, really, at one of the most photographed spots on the Appalachian Trail, McAfee Knob. Uh, this is her sitting out on the edge of McAfee Knob. And I am, as her father, I am not pleased with this picture. I'll have to say that she did run out in front of me, and her friend Paradox, who was my friend too, said, Go out on the edge and I'll get a picture before your dad shows up. Um, and she's since been out there. She goes to school down there, but that is just a spectacular view. Um, Having my daughter with me took my mind off of me. You know, we shared the experience. We developed a common bond. You know, as much as I helped her, she probably helped me more just with her enthusiasm, her determination, and her toughness because she hiked through knee pain, blisters in her feet. She was an inspiration to me, and she still is. Uh, the, me- the theme is mutual aid. which is about any recovery support. That in recovery, we are walking the road together. We help one another. We also know that in order to keep it, we have to give it away. And there's a lot of give and receiving going on the trail in the community. Um, Next piece I want to talk about is uh, it's near McAfee Knob and it's called Dragon's Tooth. It's a rock monolith, really just about 1/10 of a mile off the trail. It's also another famous spot on the Appalachian Trail. This is a picture of Dragon's Tooth in the background. I wouldn't go up there. A few of my crazy hiking friends did, of course, like Tough Love and Paradox. And there's Paradox hanging up on top. And really, there's no place to go except fall to your death from up there. So I'm not really a fan of heights as odd as that sounds. So we had some good picture taken, some good things going on. Um, what I found out that the descent from um, Dragon's Tooth was probably the steepest that we had experienced to this point. And we made our way down from Dragon's Tooth, and the rock formations were really tough. Uh, and so we were making our way down from Dragon's Tooth, and these are the this is Rock Steady on the on looking at the picture on the left in the blue shirt, Tough Love and Paradox on in the orange. And these are my hiking partners, and they had moved on ahead of me down this steep descent that you saw in the previous slide. And so I was slow and taking my way down. So they were way out in front of me, and I came down to the last two rocks, and I knew that I could see the trail flattening out in front of me. So I put my right foot down, and then I put my left foot down on the top, and was going to figure out how to inch my way down when my left foot gave way and I slid down the rock. My right foot caught. My right boot hit me in the back of the head. I felt my knee pop twice, just kind of like explode in pain. And I kind of rolled to the bottom of this little drop and just lay in the fetal position, yell, kind of shrieking in pain and then sobbing, and then pulled myself up to sitting. And I had two thoughts. I said, I can't believe my trip ended this way, and I don't know how I'm going to get down off of this mountain. I couldn't believe it was over. And then as I sat there, I felt two hands on my shoulders. And granted, there was nobody around, but I felt two hands on my shoulders. I felt energy course through me, and I heard a whisper in my left ear that said, "You're okay." And I stood up, and there was no pain in my right knee, none. And I couldn't believe it. So I started jumping up and down and saying, uh, I'm fine, I'm fine. And as I continued down the trail, I, I had emotions come over me. The first one was disbelief. I doubted that that actually happened to me. But I looked down and saw that I was bleeding and dirty and all rumpled up. And then I felt unworthy. Like it started to hit me. Did I get healed miraculously? I'm not worthy of that. And then I got angry because it occurred to me that God wasn't going to let me quit no matter what. So I might as well just continue. And that was came true after I reached the 700-mile mark and so ran into Tough Love again. And this is after the fall that I saw her, and I told her the story, and tears welled up in her eyes, and uh, Rocksteady was listening, and he said, "Right click, you're not going to be able to quit no matter what. So will you just quit your complaining, quit your whining, and continue on the journey?" And that was a point well taken. Even in recovery, tough stuff happens to us. Doesn't mean we can quit or give up. It doesn't mean that uh, um, down the road is that you might not ever know when the miracle was going to happen if you quit. And so the day after the fall really is when I see me pictured on McAfee Knob. And you notice the guy with his elbow hands on his hips way inside, that's me. That's about as close as I could get. I was pretty gun shy from the fall too. Didn't want to get to the edge too close. And of course, my daughter is the one closest to the edge. And so what I really realized too is that how do we have to surrender sometimes to win. And prior to the fall and being healed, I had been doubting my call. You know, what am I really doing out here? Was it true? But I knew for certain now that a greater power than myself was at work here. And so I surrendered. And my attitude, for the most part, the rest of the journey drastically improved. Um, I would doubt again later, but if you want to hear more about that, you know, we're going to stop now because of our limitations of technology. But there's more stories about how this happened and how I was able to continue and work through things. Um, I am more than glad to share the entire slideshow with any groups. Please reach out to Stacy at CCAR, Stacy at CCAR.us. You can also message me, but I'm going to ask Stacy to coordinate this. Actually, my speaking engagements are picking up more and more, but I love to tell the stories. Um, I realize too now that about 2/3 of the way through the book called hashtag continue because it was such a recurring theme. And as I'm writing the book, more and more stories are being revealed, more and more interactions. And so I'm really hopeful by the end of the year I'll have a published manuscript available. So that's it for me for today. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but the screen is open and we can take any questions that you might have. Do we have any questions from anybody? Um, there is a chat box on the lower right if you want to type in a question. We're not we're doing all this for the first time, so bear with us, and we'll see if anybody has anything. Stacy's typing in a comment right now. This is a picture of me actually at the finish after that's Mount Katahdin in Maine, and the final ascent was probably the most difficult. And when I'm up there smiling and holding my sign that I made, hashtag continue, in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking, how am I going to get down from this place? Well, luckily, Dr. Pickles and Mockingbird were with me, and they agreed to walk with me all the way down. And they could have gone a lot faster, but I took my time and made it down alive. Mary Kate, you're more than welcome for I love to share my journey, and I sometimes think that really the book and the talks and the lessons learned and the photos are are just the work itself is continuing. The adventure itself was one thing, but the after story is also another thing. And I believe, and I always believe, and I get this from my sponsor, is that the best is yet to come. So without taking up any more of your time, I want to thank you all for